empty, I use bobby pins.
Bobby pins? How can you use a bobby pin?
Yeah, we used to throw bobby pins.
Oh, well, we use bananas. We also use other things like a metal cover of a can and something like that. Whatever we could find, we would use.
And the boys used to play with marbles a lot.
Oh yeah, marbles is a real big game. We had marbles where we would play in a square with numbers, and if you would win your opponent's marbles. It was a very big sport, marbles. We also used to get cheese boxes. The Breckstone Cheese Company used to make cheese. Oh, let's say a 5-pound piece of cream cheese. And when he emptied the box, they would throw the box out, so we would ask for the empty boxes. Now you can imagine a box would be about a 4 by 4 by about maybe 8 or 9 inches long. It would be an empty box. So we would cut out little squares along one lip, and we would number them. And then we would put it up against the curve and roll the marble. And whatever the marble went into number 4, you would add 4, and the marble would run into 6, you'd add 6. And so we would play, adding numbers all the time, and winning marbles.
Did you ever try to make a ring from a peach pit?
Oh yes, peach pits was a big deal. You would get usually a big peach pit. Georgia peaches are big. You'd get a big peach pit, and you would rub it against the sidewalk until you would rub it real smooth. And you would flatten it out to such a degree that all you had to do was take a knife and cut the inside out, and you had a ring. And you could cut it so that the one end of it could be flattened. You're rubbing it against the sidewalk, it would be quite smooth. And you could burn an initial on there. You'd take a knife, burn the knife, or burn a nail, and you would burn an initial on it, and you would have a ring. And it was very inexpensive. During the 4th of July fires, or Election Day fires, we used to take big tin cans, coffee cans, fill it with acetylene chemical, calcium carbide. We would fill it with a couple of drops of water. We had holes at the bottom. This would generate acetylene gas. And then we would put a match at the bottom of it or a candle at the bottom of it. The can would explode. And we'd go up in the air. Sometimes the can would go as high as 100 feet. And that's if you had a big can, you could do that.
Well, we never did anything.
Oh, then we would use the same can and put wire around the can, put in a couple of pieces of wood and a potato. Set a fire going and swing the can around and around and around, giving it oxygen. And the fire would bake the potato in the can. They were delicious, full of charcoal, but delicious. So we kind of loved that. Stickball was another game.
Excuse me for interrupting, and then you'll continue with your stickball. We're trying to show you that even though we didn't have the sophisticated things that kids have today, we lived, and we had friends, and we
played games.
And we played games, so we grew up. You're talking about stickball.
When we played stickball, we would cut off the end of a broomstick, and then we would point it so that it would look like the point of a pencil. But the broomstick, as you know, is about 4 times as thick as a pencil, or 5 times as thick as a pencil. And if you rested that on a sewer cap on the street, we had 3 sewers in the street. If you rested on the sewer cap, the point would be above the ground, because we sharpened it so that the back of the little piece of stick would rest on the ground, and the point would be above the ground. Then we would take another stick, hit the point downward, you know, and take a vertical swing down, whereupon that little piece of wood would bounce up into the air. It would be spinning into the air. And you would take your stick that remained, the broomstick, and you would hit it. And it would go spinning out into halfway down the block. It was very interesting because we didn't have a rubber ball. If we had a rubber ball, we would play with a rubber ball, but we didn't. We would use this broomstick. So we had very interesting games. Of course, during the winter, we had to be a little more ingenious because with the snowballs and the sled, there wasn't too much you could do. So we used to invent games for the newcomer on the street. Now, these games were very interesting, and we would only apply it to the new boy who just moved onto the block. First of all, there was one game.
Very nice, though.
Beg pardon?
Well, that wasn't very nice what you did.
No, we play a game like the boys would urinate into the fresh snow, spelling out their name with urine. You peeing off the edge of the sidewalk, and they would write their names. It was very interesting. And then they had one more game. They had one more game for the new boy on the block. He would lean up against the lamppost. We would play Fire in the Church. And he would lean up against the lamppost, and he had to say that 3 times. Fire in the church, 1, 2, 3. Fire in the church, 1, 2, 3. Fire in the church, 1, 2, 3. But before he finished the third 1, 2, 3, all the other boys would pee on him to put out the fire. Oh, these newcomers didn't enjoy that game one bit. But it was...
in other words, the kids could be kids.
It was very ingenious and
practice.
very inexpensive.
What was your school like?
The school? In the school, discipline was very strict. When I went to school, whether we had gym or not, you had to wear gym bloomers, black stockings, a pleated navy blue skirt, a white midi blouse, and up to the 4th grade you wore a red tie, the girls. And from the 4th grade up to the 6th you wore a navy blue tie. You had to wear strict uniforms. And in those days, when the principal walked into the room, the children would stand as one and say, "Good morning, Mr. Cone," or whatever his name was. And they were very respectful. And a terrible thing, disorder was if a kid, God forbid, would chew gum or push on line or talk. You weren't allowed to talk. What else?
Well, that was a very strict...
Oh, also, the method of teaching was very disciplined and strict. If you walk into a room, Friday at 2 o'clock, every room, all the kids are doing poetry.
And is that every grade or just in one grade?
Every grade had a very
throughout
specific
the city.
Curriculum. If
Throughout
you moved
the
from
city.
Brooklyn to Bronx, you had the same lesson and you're doing the same thing. You didn't miss anything. There was no individualization. Everybody did the same thing. Now, if you would ask Dad, did you learn the Gettysburg Address?
We memorized the Gettysburg Address. We memorized the Declaration of Independence. We memorized poetry. We memorized art, art pictures. They would have big pictures like 3 by 6, big pictures, and large pictures of famous painters. And we had to know the names of them. They would play music and we had to know the names. They would play just a few notes of music and we had to know the names of them. I remember one of the songs was, "This is the symphony that Schubert wrote but never finished."
And he was brought up in Harlem. Dad's about 6 years older than I am, so he was ahead of me, and I learned the same thing. "This is the symphony that Schubert wrote but never finished." Everybody knew a little passage.
Now, you may think that was a bad thing, but it had a good thing, because if a kid moved from one street to another, or if he moved from the Bronx to Brooklyn or somewhere, he never went behind. He was up for the next lesson, because everybody in the city was doing the same thing at the same time.
And oddly enough, New York City school system was #1 in the country.
It was very good, very good.
Did they do this in other school systems, or this was unique to New
I don't
York?
remember. I only
No, that
remember
was New York
as a
City
kid. I
school
only
system.
remember
Maybe
the New York
Philadelphia was different. I don't know.
But,
Do you have any remembrances of teachers?
Sure.
Yeah, I never forgot Miss O'Neill. Grade 2A. A kid wanted to do 2A, you know, the second year was in 2A and 2B. This kid raises his hand to Miss O'Neill. He says he wants to go to the bathroom. She says, "You're not going to go to the bathroom. Sit down." So he peed on the floor. Teacher didn't yell at him or anything. She took up a package of arithmetic paper, that yellow forest paper, gave him the paper, and made him wipe it up. So this was the sort of thing. They were very
How old
strict.
was this Miss O'Neill?
Unless I was in the 2nd grade, I must have been about 8 years old. So how old was she? Oh, about 35? maybe 40, 35, 40.
But we used to learn so many things. We learned how to sew. Thursday, 2 o'clock, we had a sewing teacher come in. And they taught us basting and all kinds of stitches. And it had to be straight. We learned all these things. Geography. I remember geography that we learned in 4th grade. And history that we learned in the 5th grade. And everybody all over the city learned the same thing.
It was a very, very fascinating time. We didn't know at that time that we were learning anything. But we learned a great deal, and a lot of it lasted for our whole life.
Those days, if you graduated from high school, you were considered to have had a very, very full education.
I think they had commercial courses for people who were going into commerce, and general courses for people who were going to go beyond high school for college.
Or just a general course. You know, they taught math
and science and things like that. It was a...
What high school did you go to?
I went to James Monroe High School.
And you went to?
I went to Walton High School up to the 3rd sophomore year, and then I transferred to James Monroe.
James Monroe High School had several thousand students. I may be wrong, but I thought they had about 5,000 or 6,000 students. And they had a swimming pool for the first time I ever saw a swimming pool in a school. And they had a track where you run around a track, a 440-yard track. And we had a athletic field where you could play baseball or football.
Did they have specialized high schools in those days?
No.
Well, they had...
Hunter?
Hunter was a specialized school. And
I
one or
don't think
two...
they had Hunter High School in my day.
No, but they had one or
They
two
had Hunter
schools.
College.
But they had one or two schools where you could
Every
go through.
school was special.
The one at City College, what is that? I forget what they called it. They had a school there that was anchored at City College, where a student could take 3 years of high school work and finish a 4-year curriculum.
I forgot the name.
I forget the name of the school, but I think they still have it today.
Yeah.
Only now it's in Queens. You can take a rapid advanced high school course. It was very good, very select students. In those days, to get into a place like City College, your high school record had to be about a 90 average or a 90 plus. But this wasn't an inflated average. This was a hard, fast, rigorous average. And the teachers who marked you were very hard. They never marked you leniently. They thought it was good to mark you hard. So when I went to City College, we had a select students there. In the 1930s, we had a very, very select student.